We can't talk about Dusty's booking without maybe it wasn't even his creation, but the Dusty finish. Where did the Dusty finish come from, and why is it named after Dusty?
Well, Dusty would go to a town, and I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to leave them in a positive frame of mind because he would have, uh, I think the heel would do something, and then they would continue the match, and then the babyface would do the same move that the heel did on him, like put foot on the ropes, and the baby faces would go over, which the people in the house were excited. Then they would go back on TV and reverse the decision because the baby face cheated. And they would have film of it. And it's called the Dusty Finish. And it kind of backfired on him. Instead of just having a DQ and the heel beating the hell out of the guy, they'd kind of put the baby face over, but then go back on TV and disappoint the fans after they believed that the baby face had won. It's called Dusty Finish. It got more prevalent in the dirt sheets because the dirt sheets then were like the Twitter of today. People bitch about anything, and they started calling that the Dusty Finish, except, especially Dave Meltzer, the Dusty Finish, and he called them the Dusty Finish. Well, that finish had been used for years in wrestling, and without the dirt sheets, it wouldn't have caught on really. But when the smart marks kind of took it over, then the regular marks who don't read Meltzer, don't even know who Meltzer is, they kind of caught on to it, and it developed a life of its own, as evidenced by you just bringing it up, the Dusty Finish. Mm. I think it was much more talked about in the dirt sheets and the smart sheets than anything else.
Who do you think invented it? Do you know? I always heard Eddie Graham may have invented it.
It's an old wrestling finish. It's been used for years and years and years, but maybe not to the extent maybe Dusty used it too much. Hey, just because you're a good booker don't mean you can't make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And Dusty, if he was still with us, he would tell us, yeah, he made a lot of mistakes.
With Dusty's charisma, interview skills, and everything else, Hulk Hogan's on this A&E documentary and just says when he first got to Memphis, he was doing a really lame Dusty Rhodes impersonation when he was being interviewed by Lance, and I'm sure a lot of other people were as well, because superstar Billy Graham, he was like the prototype that so many people copied. I'm sure a lot of people copied Dusty as well. Do you know who were maybe some of the best imitators of Dusty Rhodes' style? Because I wrote one down for you as well, but I won't say it.
I know who it is.
Go on.
And I read what you wrote down, but it immediately came to mind. Dream Machine. Dream Machine did a Dusty, and I don't know if it was a Dusty impression or it was the Dream Machine impression that he just came up with. Because here's a story from the past. Troy Graham was the Dream Machine's name, out from under the hood. Jimmy Hart managed him. And he used to have some sayings I'd never heard before. He'd say, I wish I had thought about this before I went on. I can't remember it now. Graveyard dying or lying or something. It was really, really good. I remember it. I'll do it on next week's show when I think about it. But the Dream Machine, Dusty heard Dream Machine doing the interview, and he went out of his way to personally get a hold of Jimmy Hart, I think, who was managing Dream Machine, and wanted him to come, I think, to Mid-Atlantic, to Charlotte.
It's going to be graveyard digging and a coffin a buying. Is it that?
Right.
There you go.
Yep, that's it. Graveyard digging, coffin buying, old times something, and something flying. But when he would just put that in an interview, it's magical. You say, what the hell is this guy? The Dusty saw a tape of him and loved him. And he wanted to bring him to Charlotte to work against him. I mean, he was going to be Dusty's personal selection to come in and work against Dusty, which the end run would have been that the Dream Machine would eventually turn babyface and join Dusty in their quest to rid Mid-Atlantic of all these dastardly bad guys. And Dream, when he heard what Dusty wanted to do, he turned him down.
Really?
He turned him down. He said, nope. He said, I'm Memphis born and I'm Memphis bred. And when I die, I'm going to be Memphis dead. That's why he said, because I think he said that, but he couldn't leave Memphis, I think, because his sister was, I think, really involved in drugs. She was like an addict. And his mother was older. The daddy, they don't know where he went. He's really a tragic story, but he would not leave his mother and he wouldn't leave his sister to go somewhere else, which I respect him for that. Mm-hmm. And the last, and Dream is dead now. Great, great guy. I'm sitting in, we go on this trip one time. I think we went to Louisville. So we share a room. And I wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I look over, there's Dream Machine, the light on. And he just looking straight ahead like this. And I look at him, and he must have been really messed up on something. And I've never told this story before, but he had a blade in his hand, and he had bladed himself, and it had run down his face onto his chest. Brother, you talk about, I came out of that bed. I said, what the fuck are you doing? Hey, brother. He said, oh, man, I just can't sleep. I said, I thought it was nuts. And I finally, made him go clean himself up, get back in the bed, and I tried to go, but I couldn't sleep then. I said, my thought was, if a guy's going to injure himself over there, I know he don't give a shit about me. The hell, he could be over here stabbing me in the neck with that. That was the first time and the last time I ever shared a room with Dream Machine, and I loved him to death. The last time I saw him, I made an independent show, and this was after the Memphis territory had kind of closed down. But, fans never forget, so I made this independent show right across the line from Memphis to West Memphis, Arkansas. And I made a shot for an independent group over there. And I saw Dream, which I hadn't seen 3 or 4 years, and it was almost pathetic what I saw. He was a guy. He used to be a big guy. He was kind of thin. I mean, he still had the talk. He still had the voice, but he was horrible. And he asked me, could I loan him any money? And I did. Hell, that could have been me too. I'm a sucker for that. But I gave him some money. And that's and the next thing I heard about 6 months later, he had died. So I'm glad I gave him the money, because sometimes things happen to people. Things happen to good people. Troy Graham was a good guy, really good guy. And I'm not saying any of these things happened, because I think it was the way he was brought up, the culture that he was around. But the ending wasn't what I'd wish for him, and I'm sure he'd thought about it. He wouldn't wish it on himself either. But I'm glad I knew him. One thing about Dream, he heard Andy Kaufman doing that interview. I may have covered this before.
No.
And Andy Kaufman would get on Memphis TV why he was hated so bad. And this is where I got, don't attack your opponent so much. Attack the people that support your opponent. And he said, oh, yeah, come this Memphis, Tennessee down here. Yeah. Oh, man, he was hilarious. And it made Dream so mad. Dream come up to me right after the interview, and he says, Dutch, they shouldn't allow him to do that. I went, Dream, it's an interview. You're supposed to do it. I don't like it. Because he made fun of Memphis people. And he's like you said, he was Memphis born, Memphis bred. And when he dies, he'll be Memphis dead. But I'll never will forget that. Dream didn't like the interview. Later on, he learned to like Andy a lot.
So Dream Machine sort of sounds like the Buddy Landell, you're sort of like Buddy Landell and Ric Flair and Dream Machine and Dusty Rhodes in that sense. That they actually could have feuded and then they both just didn't for whatever reason.
Well, but think of that. Dusty and Dream Machine together versus Flair and Buddy Landell.
What a match.
I would pay money just to hear the interviews. Because Dream would go out there and he'd think about the interviews. Dusty kind of had an interview, but if he got Dream Machine with him, there's no telling what they could have come up with. That to me is a dream team. And if anybody doubts Dream Machine's ability to cut the interview, go to YouTube. And these are interviews that he just cut off the top of his head when the camera was on. And if you're familiar with Buddy Landell, watch some of his interviews, because years ago, we didn't have writers that write down interviews for us. We had bookers that came to us and said, listen, go out there, talk about this, on this date in this town, and go out there and sell some tickets. That's all you had. Then you go out there and you could talk about your prior difficulties or your problems with these people and make it interesting and make it sell.